Hello?
Told y'all not to come.
Good evening, and welcome to the Podcast Compels You, the show in which we review horror movies that fit our current cursed category. A cursed category assigned to us by our evil AI mastermind consists of two requirements for a movie. We have to find two horror movies that fulfill both requirements and review them before the clock runs out. What clock? I don't know. Or our evil AI mastermind punishes us jigsaw style. I mean, we can only imagine. I mean, it hasn't happened yet. Anyway, I'm your host, Stacy. I'm here tonight with my co-host, Bill. How are you tonight, Bill?
I'm doing all right. I got a little dizzy earlier, but I think I am on top of the world now, so I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Have you seen any movies lately?
No, I'm going to be the buzzkill this week. I've just been really busy. That's my excuse. And you know what? There's a lot of movies that are like in my queue right now. So I'm like super pumped, and it's October, and I'm excited to get to all these movies. I just haven't had time. So I think this week might be the week where I just blaze through a whole bunch of really good movies. So I have not. But how about you,
Nice.
Stacey?
I saw a very interesting movie that I really liked. I saw A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, which they screened at the Alamo Drafthouse, even though it was released in 2014. So it was just them playing an older movie. Have you seen this one?
No, I'm looking it up right now. That poster looks very familiar, but no, I have not seen it. How was it?
So it's billed as the first Iranian vampire movie, although it was filmed in the US because there's like no way that they could have actually made it in Iran. I mean, there were women in it, they didn't have their hair covered. So, I mean, the fact that they couldn't make it there is one of the things that makes it all the more intriguing to me.
Right.
And it's politically subversive in a lot of ways, probably like way more ways than I was able to pick up on because of like language and culture differences. I mean, but the title alone is very politically charged if you're Iranian.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say too much about it because it's such an odd, interesting movie. It's in black and white,
Hmm.
and
I'm reading that it's a Western.
it takes place in like a ghost town. So I think
Okay.
that's how they categorized it. I'm not familiar enough with like the genre, like the beats of a Western. So I
Hmm.
can't speak to that. But it's not your typical horror movie for sure. But I think you would enjoy it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll check it
You know
out.
me, I'm not even like that into vampire movies, but this one was amazing.
Just foreign vampire movies, apparently.
Apparently so, yeah. Um, I haven't seen any new movies since we spoke last, but the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards took place, and I thought I would briefly comment on some of the newer films that you and or I and or both of us have enjoyed and or talked about on the show and how they fared or did not fare in the Chainsaw Awards. So, the top takeaway is that Evil Dead Rise won a lot of categories. I knew you'd be
Nice.
happy about that.
Yeah.
Best supporting performance to Alyssa Sutherland, who played the Evil Dead mom. Best creature effects, best makeup effects, no surprise there.
I figured they'd sweep those categories.
Best director, which I think is considered like the biggest award.
Sure. Wow.
Yeah,
That's great.
that's Lee Cronin, the director.
Hmm.
Another one I think we both liked, Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah.
Colin and Cameron Cairns won that for best screenplay. Yay. They thought it was a very good screenplay. And David Dastmalchian won best lead performance. He also liked one of my pictures on Instagram, so I think that means I'm his girlfriend now. Our relationship has progressed quite a long way this year, starting at the beginning of the year with me not knowing how to pronounce his last name, and now this development.
Wow, you come a long way. I think that all checks out, I think. Yeah, I think you guys are definitely in a
Yes.
relationship.
Very sad for his wife because he is married.
Oh.
Yeah. I saw the TV Glow won Best Limited Release. That was nice. And here's the one that you're really going to be happy about, I think.
Ooh.
the yoga kill scene from In a Violent
Oh,
Nature won for Best Kill, and the acceptance speech video was fucking hilarious.
oh, I'm gonna check that out for sure.
It's both of the actors together, and I don't want to ruin it for you, but yeah,
Interesting. I think if Terrifier 3 had come out during that time period, I think that probably would have won. I have not seen it
they're going to
yet, but I
consider it for next year. So,
okay, gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah, that'll probably be a contender for that.
they changed their schedule. So, there were actually 18 months worth of movies that were eligible this year.
Hmm.
And so next year it's just going to be 12 months, I think.
Okay, cool.
I didn't totally understand the
Yeah.
explanation for that. Anyway, so that's pretty great. On the other hand, completely shut out of the chainsaws this year were Talk to Me, The First Omen, which we did a whole episode on that
Yeah.
listeners should totally check out. And it didn't even make the ballot for best first feature for some reason. It was her first feature.
I feel like that should have won for like cinematography. I don't know if that was one of the categories, but like that's what I remember from that movie.
It was. It should have won cinematography. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was going to say. And
Hmm.
do you want to know what movie won best first feature?
I have no idea.
Skinamarink.
Oh no. I mean, okay.
I
In
know.
fairness, I have not seen it, but I am so uninterested in that movie.
Nothing happens.
That's
Well,
exactly what I've
maybe
heard.
something happens, but I should have watched it with my brightness all the way up because you can't see a fucking thing.
But you
All right.
shouldn't have to do that. Anyway.
Also, Immaculate didn't win anything. Neither did Abigail. Neither did Totally Killer, Lisa Frankenstein, or A Quiet Place Day One.
Wow. Those are some pretty notable ones left out.
Yeah. But I was very happy for those two movies, Evil Dead Rise and Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah, that's
Love
super
those
cool.
movies. A
Nice.
little bummed about Talk to Me because not only was that a good movie, it had such a great origin story.
And it did really well too, didn't it? I mean, that was a
Oh yeah,
pretty huge release. So,
it
yeah.
was a they're very, very nice, sweet deal.
Is there a sequel in the works for that?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I
Think so.
remember reading somewhere.
Yeah. So this weekend I'm going to be seeing Smile 2. I know the
Hmm.
first one got a lot of hate from the hardcore horror fans, whom I
Yeah.
respect, as anything with mainstream appeal tends to do, unfortunately. But I thought it was the first movie was really fun, and the
Mhm.
trailer makes this movie look really fun.
I will say I've heard from some very respected film people that it's better than the first. So,
Oh,
yeah, that's a good sign.
it felt like the first one was unfairly criticized by people who weren't taking into consideration what it was really trying to do. But, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, so speaking of Fangoria and those people, I heard that Heretic was the secret surprise screening at Fantastic Fest,
Oh,
which
cool.
major FOMO. One day I'll get to go, considering it's in my state.
I was
You
gonna
would
say
think
that's in Tejas.
I I've never been able to go for one reason or another, but I did attend the Fangoria editorial town hall, and of course they were all there, and their reactions to this movie were resoundingly positive.
Nice.
So I'm even more excited about it now. I think it's going to be baller.
When does that come out? Is that November,
November
December?
8th, I think, something
Okay.
like that. Yeah, so really
Nice.
soon.
Yeah. I gotta take my wife again. That's her crush. So she has no excuse not to see it.
She absolutely has to see it. She's allowed to cover her eyes
Yes,
sometimes, but
that's fair.
maybe one bathroom trip.
Absolutely. Should we get into our curse categories?
Let's go for it.
All right. So our new set of curse categories are films that take place in a rural or farm setting, and they must feature siblings, which I think this lends itself well to the fall. What's that?
Siblings in the Sticks. That's what I'm calling it.
Oh, nice. I was wondering what you were going to call this series.
I guess I should have told
Siblings
you,
in the
huh?
Sticks. Now, that's okay. It's more fun when you just spring it on me. Siblings in the Sticks. So, the first film of this series that we'll be covering tonight is 2020's The Dark and the Wicked, written and directed by Brian Bertino. He has written all four to date of the Strangers films, as well as directing the original, which I personally love. I think it's one of the better horror films in the last like 20 years. He also has a producer credit on a film that we covered very early in the pod, 2016's The Blackcoat's Daughter. I feel like a lot of our credits keep coming back to The Blackcoat's Daughter. It's kind of the unifier of all horror.
Interesting.
The film stars Marin Ireland, whose credits are primarily in TV, Michael Abbott Jr., who was in Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, which I did not see, but any Scorsese movie is a pretty big deal, and Julie Oliver Touchstone, who was in Stacy's favorite film of 2024, Twisters.
Oh God. I was like, wait, what? I haven't told you what
Huh?
my
Huh?
favorite
Yeah.
is yet for this year.
So overall, a pretty unknown cast, I guess. I didn't recognize any of them. Did you?
I feel like the priest is a character actor that I've seen before, but I didn't look it up, so
Okay, I'll have to
not
look that
sure.
up
Yeah.
after. You might be right. The Dark and the Wicked was originally set to have its world premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival, but it was canceled due to COVID, unfortunately. Another COVID casualty. The Dark and the Wicked tells the story of adult siblings Luis and Michael who have traveled to their parents' farm to check on their isolated mom and ailing father. Horrific events soon start taking place. As they try to make sense of what is happening, the line between dream and reality begins to blur as they struggle to survive against a seemingly invisible demonic presence. Stacy, had you seen this film before?
Nice synopsis.
Thank you.
Yes. I saw this when it was released for streaming, and I'll stop myself before I give you my full opinion, but it stayed with me in a good way. Just
Okay.
say that. And I got a couple of fun facts. Do you
Oh,
want to hear
cool.
those now?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I went to a fundraiser for the Harris Walls campaign called Scare Up the Vote. It was an online fundraiser, and it featured a conversation between Stephen King and his son, who's named Joe Hill. He wrote The Black Phone and Nosferatu. And Joe asked his dad, "What movie do you think is underrated or has not gotten enough attention?" And Stephen King, to my delight, answered The Dark and the Wicked. There you have it. The king of horror himself is
Wow.
telling you to go watch this movie, so you better do it.
That's a pretty big deal. Wait, this was so
Right?
we had already chosen to watch this movie and it just happened
It
to come
was
up
just
at
this
this.
week. Yep.
Oh, that
Tuesday.
is very random and serendipitous.
Yeah. Lots of fun things said at the fundraiser, like let's vote the monsters out. And
Nice.
my personal favorite, which I might have made up, make horror fiction again.
Ooh, I like that.
Thanks. I have another
Simple but
fun
effective.
fact. Thank you. The filming of The Dark and the Wicked took place in Texas at the actual farm owned by writer-director Brian Bertino's parents.
Oh, that's cool. Another
So
Texas movie,
that's
man.
some realism for you right there.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that definitely lends a little more I don't know, a little more authenticity to the movie. That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
What streaming service did this get released on?
I believe it was Netflix, but it's
Okay.
not on there anymore.
Yeah. I couldn't find it. I was thinking either Shudder or Netflix, but okay.
Yep, it
Makes
might be on
sense.
Shudder now. I
Nice.
might be wrong about that. I just thought that it was on. I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to fact check this, but I believe you had not seen this one
No,
before.
I had never even heard of this, and it was a pleasant surprise because, yeah, I will just say overall, I had a favorable opinion of it. I won't ruin anything. But with that being said, I did have three things I thought I might see. The first
Nice.
one was city folk who look down on the main family. Second one, a character commits suicide. Boom, nailed it.
You got that one.
And three, an old timey song that is played for creeps. There is something that I could kind of
Yeah,
spin
yeah.
into this a little bit.
I think we'll give you that one.
Yeah. I always have one that's kind of like a half point out of my three, and then like
We're
one's
gonna round
terrible
that
and
up for
one's
you.
yeah, we'll
Yeah.
just round that right up. So yeah, those are my three things I thought I'd expect. Stacy, do you have any content warnings for this movie?
Yes, the main content warnings for this one in general are violence and gore, as well as frightening and intense scenes, which many viewers might find to be on the severe end of the spectrum. One of those scenes involves children. There is some extreme self-harm and suicide. While no dogs die, there are animal deaths, and personally, I found them pretty sad and disturbing. To address some of the other phobias, there are also spiders. A lot of the plot is around the topic of death and dying. There's some body horror. I'm not going to go into the specifics of the violence, injury, suicide, and gore, etc., to avoid spoilers of some of the awesome stuff in the movie. But there are many specific scenarios depicted that I'll just say certain viewers may wish to avoid. We encourage you to check the site doesthedogdie.com if you have particular triggers, especially around bodily harm and various body parts. That site surveys users on a long list of triggers about movies, but do be wary of spoilers as they can be tricky to avoid.
Nice. I guess that brings us to our dark fact of the day.
All right.
Dark fact.
So for today's dark fact, I was kind of looking into various like sleep conditions, and they're all kind of fascinating, but the one that caught my eye is sleep paralysis, which,
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
yeah, it is wild. And it's apparently a universal experience through like so many different cultures, and they all have kind of a different name for it. Like, so in Newfoundland, it's called old hag syndrome, where a
Mm-hmm.
witch-like figure is felt sitting on the chest. In
Mm-hmm.
Nigeria, a demon woman paralyzes people in their dreams, while in Japan, a vengeful spirit suffocates sleepers. And then in Brazil, a crone named Pisadera attacks those who sleep on their backs after a big meal, which I thought that was very specific. I'm like,
Mm.
big meal, lay on your back, you're in trouble. And just overall, I also kept reading about, I think they call it like the intruder syndrome. And basically, it's like sleep paralysis mixed with like sleep hallucinations, where
Mm-hmm.
people think that someone has broken into their house and it seems very real and they can't move their body. So,
I
like,
used
they
to have that.
can't defend themselves or anything.
Yeah, I used to, as a teenager, I had very active sleep paralysis and hallucinations. I
Oh,
would
wow.
see people come into the room and leave the room, and I couldn't do anything about it. And one time, and even knowing that I had this going on, like it still tricked me sometimes. One time, my boyfriend came in and sat down and had an entire conversation with me and then left. And then I thought, how did he get in the house? Turns out, never happened.
Oh
Hallucination.
my gosh. How often did it happen? Like, was this like weekly or like,
It was like ages 16 to 15 to 17 maybe, and then it went away eventually, although sometimes it still happens. Sometimes a crow or a raven would be sitting on my chest. I mean, you might wonder, how did I get into horror after experiencing all of that real horror? But that's often
yeah.
how we do get into horror, I guess. Uh,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it was pretty frequent, like once every 2 months or something. But I mean, that's still a lot when you're hallucinating such disturbing things.
That is terrifying. I even read of a story of one woman who, again, had the intruder thing where she thought someone was coming in to burglarize her house. She woke up the next day, found out someone actually had. And this
Oh
is a
my God.
woman who dealt with sleep paralysis. So it's like,
How would you know?
yeah, it's just like so many levels of just insanity. I can't even imagine. But that's fascinating. I didn't even know that you had that. Look at that.
Yeah.
That
I
makes
hadn't
it
thought
even
about it
more
in a while.
interesting. Oh, well,
Yeah.
sorry. I just reopened that
Oh
wound.
no, I think it's fascinating.
It always kind of reminds me of, did you ever see, you saw Gerald's Game, right? Or did you?
Nope, that's the one I avoided for
Oh, because of
reasons.
there's a scene in there. It's just spooky. It's not like, you know, weird or anything. There's a scene in there that reminds me of this where this tall man is just in the corner and she wakes up and it's just like she has no idea if he's real or not. It's just the creepiest scene. Ugh.
There's something universal about that tall man, sometimes called the shadow man or the hat man,
Yes.
because he wears
Uh-huh.
a hat. And it's always interesting to see a figure like that show up in a movie.
Yeah.
Because I think it's one of those universally scary things.
It's in everybody's like DNA where it like freaks them out for some reason. Even if you haven't seen it before, it's just it's there.
Yeah.
Ugh. Anyway, that was our dark fact of the day. We are going to have a brief intermission and then we will return with our spoilerific review of The Dark and the Wicked. Stick around. Welcome back to the podcast Compels You. We are now going to switch over to our spoilerific review of The Dark and the Wicked, so I will hand it over to Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy, and I have all the spoilers for you. During the opening credits of The Dark and the Wicked, we get some dark and wicked, or just dark really, shots of the farm, including some goats, and there's a woman. She's cutting some fabric in a spooky sewing room that's like inside the barn. Is that a normal thing?
No, but I was kind of liking it, honestly. It
Yeah,
seems like a cool workspace to have.
it was eventually convenient for her, but
Well, do you remember in The Devil's Candy, Ethan Embry's character was a painter in a barn. So it's,
that makes more sense to me
yeah,
because
I don't
that
know.
you would want to have that like in and out. Maybe not. I don't know. Like don't get to paint on the furniture, but I think
Oh
with
yeah,
a
there you
sewing
go.
room, I think maybe their house just seemed kind of small, so maybe
Yeah,
this is just where they had room for it. And she looked like she was a pretty serious seamstress. She had a lot of
yeah.
dress forms and mannequins, which are always spooky, and a lot of
I mean, is
fabric
that
and
is that
stuff
considered a
around.
she shed? I believe that's a thing.
I think that term was coined even after the movie was made.
Oh,
So,
so she was ahead of head of
oh, yeah,
head of the trend.
yeah, pioneer. It's a goat farm. That seems to be the major thing. The goats here in the opening credits are kind of agitated. She hears some noise. They have like these bottles and clinky things and metal things and chains like hung around the barn and inside the barn to kind of make noise, I guess, if something is fucking with the goats or going in or out.
I assumed it was like coyotes or something to keep coyotes away,
Sure, that's a
maybe.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The woman then goes inside, checks on her dying husband, who throughout the movie lies fairly motionless in bed with his eyes closed and he's on oxygen. That's about all you need to know about him.
Yep.
Next, we see the woman writing in her diary. This is important later. Then we hear a wolf howling. But look, I live in Texas and we don't have wolves. In fact, wolves are functionally extinct in most of North America thanks to hunting and habitat destruction.
Oh,
What we do have are coyotes, and we're also destroying their habitat. So they even come to like suburban neighborhoods and eat house pets, sadly.
hmm.
But we suspend disbelief for this movie, so some wolf-like creature of some kind is making all this noise and we presume has killed one of the goats, or I think that's what the movie means us to believe because there's another disturbance in the jingly things, and then we see in the very next shot a goat skull hung on the wall in the house. So are we thinking like they put up a skull every time a goat dies, or they did?
No, I didn't even put that together. I thought it was just a clever cut to show the inside. But yeah, you could be right.
Could be, yeah. Then the woman's cutting onions at the sink. She's standing with her back to the camera at the sink, cutting a lot in this movie. And the sound of the knife on the cutting board is like just this regular, like, and I feel like this sound has become symbolic of her whole life now. She's like putting one foot in front of the other. She continues to exist because she's still alive and breathing.
Right.
Anyway, she's cutting there, and a chair moves by itself behind her. And she kind of like looks back a little. And then we get the jump scary title card with a stinger. How do you feel about a jump scary title card with a stinger, Bill?
Normally not a fan, but this movie, there's a bunch of jump scares in this movie, and I actually liked them. I don't like jump scares normally. I think they're usually very cheap, but this movie did a great job with jump scares, which is high praise.
I think to a certain extent they're required. Personally, I enjoy the title card stinger thing, which
Yeah,
is probably way overused, but I do enjoy it,
it's fun.
especially in the theater. And I thought it was good in this one.
Yeah.
So then we get more goat footage, and we see a young woman who's Louise. She's opening the gate to enter the property, and then she drives up to the house. So that kind of gives us an idea of like the lay of the land, how much land they might have. She's come to visit her dying father in the way that like so many of us like get the call like it's time to come home, you
Hmm.
know, and the mom says,
I told y'all not to come.
normal thing to say. This is important later.
Yeah.
So the brother Michael had also arrived, and we meet him in one of the more cheerful scenes of the movie, trying to fix a flat tire with the ranch hand Charlie. So I imagine the casting call for the brother is something like generic looking white dude with a beard. Sorry, Michael Abbott Jr.
He looked a lot like the guy from Midsommar. He's been in other stuff too. I can't think. I
Oh,
should have looked up the actor's name, but I kept thinking it was the same guy. Again, kind of generic white guy with a beard, kind of,
there's so many
yeah,
of them though. How
soft
would you know?
spoken, not a lot of emotion. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he plays that not
stoic.
emotional very well.
Hmm.
I imagine the casting call for the ranch hand Charlie was like, we want Sam Elliott, but on a
Yeah,
budget.
definitely.
So I just want to say this movie has a lot of beautiful, dark, haunting shots of the actual farm property under a beautiful sky. And I really like the way that the shots are interspersed. This whole movie is a vibe, and I'm here for it.
Yes.
So the three of the not dying characters are having dinner, and Louise tries to make like friendly chit chat with the mom. The mom like immediately shuts her down and yells at them that they shouldn't have come. So she says that a lot. It's a fun line to play around with because it's one of those things that someone says in that kind of situation, meaning like, oh, you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to come.
It's a
Dad
mom
wouldn't have
thing to
wanted you to
say.
come. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But I would say with this emotional outburst at dinner, we realize like she is really and truly not wanting them to be there for some
Right.
reason. And this is out of order in the conversation, but something else that she says that's important, and that's something about the dad wanting the work to continue, like meaning the
Yeah.
farm work. And I'll get to why that's important later, or in my opinion. Did you notice it always looks really dark inside the house? I mean, sure, dark is in the title of the movie, but like even when all the lights are on, you see like various lamps turned on around the room.
Hmm.
It's always dark.
Yes, I did. I did see that.
I kind of like that. I don't like it to be so dark that you have to turn up the brightness, as we were just talking about earlier,
Yeah.
but yeah. So the siblings kind of spend some time together getting caught up on the porch after dinner. No deep conversation ever, but like drinking and smoking. Michael provides some exposition. He plans on staying till Friday.
There's a lot of porch conversations. I'll just say that.
Yeah. He has a wife and two daughters that he didn't bring with him because his wife didn't want to upset the daughters. So I'm kind of like, I don't think I like her or him. He asked Louise if she's still at her job at the post office, and she says mysteriously without any explanation, not anymore.
I mean, this is pretty much all the background we get on these two
This is
characters,
it.
which
Yeah.
I kind of like. Again, they could have gone way too overboard with explaining too much about their family lives or whatever,
Yeah.
but no, that's it.
The important thing is he's got a family and a job, and she has neither. So
Right.
Michael then says right after that, we can't leave her alone out here. And I take this to mean that he thinks Louise ought to be staying out here and taking care of her
Yes.
parents, since she's the only one that's not married, has no kids, has no job, and she's a woman.
Right.
Even though this is not explicitly said, like, I think it happens enough in real life how all the responsibility gets shifted onto one adult child. And sometimes it's not even a woman, but I'm
Sure.
I've seen this happen in my own family, and I'm holding a grudge against this character Michael now. I don't like him very much. So then we have an interior shot of Louise locking the door before bed, very pointedly testing to make sure it's locked. And I remember watching that for the first time, and I'm like, I hope this pays off immediately. And it does. She's at the kitchen sink getting water with her back turned, and the door opens, which is the proper plot point that needs to happen now.
Hmm.
And as she's going back over to lock the door, there's a delicious, kind of scary moment. We see the dark silhouette of a man standing in the bedroom doorway. So, like, is it the father? Is the father actually getting up when nobody, like, it's clearly a man. It's not the brother.
Right.
But she locks it again. She turns to go back, and on this direction, the dark silhouette is of her mother, who's a lot shorter. And she startles Louise by saying, Louise. So that was a fun little scare sequence. Like, it's a creative jump scare. It's not
Yes.
just, yeah.
I agree.
And then instead of being like, what do you want, mama? She's like, it's just the wind. She goes to bed. And we see Michael at the kitchen table looking at papers. And this is, doesn't really turn out to be important to the plot, but we see him writing, and there's some like bill looking papers in one hand with some like red on the papers. So I think this is that kind of tropey scene that
Yep.
we're meant to understand. The farm might be in financial trouble. Michael might be in financial trouble. He's brought the stuff with him. It doesn't really
It's the
matter.
same as in Devil's Candy. You got Ethan Every's got
Yes.
his pile of bills
Yes.
that he's like,
They were like just a little more subtle about it in this movie, or maybe
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was in the editing, but yeah, I think we're meant to understand that there's these are not rich people. I think
No.
that's the point.
Correct.
Once again, Mama is at the kitchen sink cutting, and we hear the thump thump. And Mama's also singing what sounds like the beginning of a hymn. She's also singing that at the very beginning of the movie. Forgot to
Yes.
mention.
Hmm.
She only ever sings a couple lines. The hymn is actually What a Friend We Have in Jesus, which I looked up.
Oh, cool.
And the subtitles say that she's singing every trials and temptations. And I was like, this is fucking driving me nuts because that is grammatically incorrect. I mean, and not even in a way that a country person would say. Like, it's just
Right.
every is a singular thing. Any speaker of English knows this. Like, each, every. But what
Right.
I think she's actually singing when I looked up the lyrics is how the song actually goes. Have we trials and temptations? But like, because of her accent, I think that's how they subtitled it.
Gotcha.
Hopefully, this clears things up. I know that's exactly why our listeners listen to the show because of the hard hitting research.
Of course.
So, here are the lyrics that she keeps singing. It goes, have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? She always gets to those two lines. And then the next line, sometimes she sings it, sometimes she just starts to sing it. But the next line she sings is, what a friend we have in Jesus, which is not the line that comes next in the song. That line is actually the first line in the hymn. And the other lyrics come like from the second verse. So she's singing it wrong throughout the entire movie,
Hmm.
which may or may not be significant.
Right.
Anyway, so Michael is like, Mom, I think you should go to bed, get some rest. But she doesn't. She tries again to convince Michael that he and Louise should leave. And she says,
It's not what you think.
which I assume means your father and they're dying. This is not the situation that you think. I'm not just telling you to go home because I'm a mom and it's a mom thing to say.
Yeah.
But it's like she doesn't have the best communication skills. And I think
No.
it's at this point because of what's going on with her.
Sure.
So Michael goes to bed and Mama stays there cutting and cutting. She hears that chair moving again, tries to ignore it. She keeps cutting faster and faster. Eventually, she starts cutting her own fingers. It is
Uh,
quite graphic and gory, and perhaps one of those scenes where you might want to cover your eyes if you're squeamish. What did you think about this scene, Bill? Did you think it looked like a real hand?
I I absolutely thought this was not real. I thought it was a dream or like a hallucination, and she was gonna be like,
Uh,
oh, and then wake up and be like, oh, and then puts everything away.
but
So
the
I was
fake hand, the
shocked.
effects, what did you think?
They were fine.
Yeah,
They were fine. They
it was
didn't
a
really
little
stand out when,
uncanny to me.
and maybe that's what played into this idea that I thought it was a dream or that she was
Yeah,
hallucinating. Because yeah, it didn't quite, and it seemed so dramatic the way she was doing it. She was like really hacking away.
she
It
got,
wasn't like,
she took some time like cutting the bone and stuff, but then she started to chop really, really
yeah,
fast. And
it
that
seemed
didn't
very
seem real.
surreal to me. And I really thought they were going to do the thing because a lot of movies do that, like a
Yeah,
character kind of, falls into this weird dream hallucination state and then wakes up from it. It's like, okay, whew, that was
sure.
close.
Often it's cheap when they do that, but yeah.
Exactly.
This, I think, like in the future, when this movie becomes the cult classic that it deserves to be, like this will be one of the iconic scenes
Yes,
of horror in
I
it.
agree.
Even though, like, to me, this is not what's really scary about the movie at all. So Michael and Louise wake up in the morning and we don't really see any of their life, which is kind of nice until they're running out the door. We see like the
Yes.
blood and they're running out the door looking for their mom because her fingers and blood stayed behind in the kitchen, but she's not around. So they find her in the barn. She's hanged up in the barn. And Louise grabs a tub and turns it over to climb up to be able to get her down. It's important to note that that tub wasn't nearby. Ooh. They'll
Yeah.
mention it later.
Yes.
So the nurse comes to visit. This is where we're introduced to the character of the nurse. She seems like a pretty typical nurse. She expresses her condolences. She tells the siblings that their mom was saying some weird things, like sitting next to the dad and whispering, but not to him, like talking to someone else who wasn't really there or who might be there, but who was unseen.
Yeah.
She says that she prayed for the parents, and she says it might be better if they could set up another shift of a nursing so someone could be there at night. What a nice idea. Who can
Sure.
afford that though? I mean, so often that is something that people need and it's not covered by insurance, which these people probably don't have.
Right.
So that's a thing. And Louise is like, "Oh, I could do it."
Bad idea.
Terrible idea, Louise. Yeah. Michael suggests they take him to the hospital, which is like, do you know that hospitals don't actually care if someone is slowly dying? They
Right.
don't actually care unless you're going to die in that moment. So like what Michael's saying is really naive, but it's probably what a lot of people his age actually believe
Sure.
if they haven't been through it with somebody already. I mean, you can be in the exact catatonic or whatever the medical term is, comatose like state
Hmm.
as this father, and you're in the hospital, like for some other reason, they will discharge a person like this who can't even get up and walk out on their own. They will tell
Right.
the family, time to go home. Anyway, that's just me inserting my little for our listeners who are overseas in places such as Portugal or Costa Rica, they may not
Right.
realize that this is how the United States works. So just a little, background information, cultural context.
Well, and Michael and Luis, they're just in like a crappy situation. Like neither of
Ugh,
them has
awful.
experience with this. Like they're trying to
Mm-mm.
do their best to come up with some sort of plan, and it's just you feel for
Yeah,
them. Like this obviously came
yeah,
out of left field. You're already dealing with one parent that's who's, how long has this guy been bedridden, and like this thing comes out of nowhere. So I feel for them at this part.
yeah. I think the path that Michael is on, and then Louise interrupts him, is like, or a hospice or a home of some kind where
Right.
they can offer 24-hour care.
Sure.
We don't know if that's something they could have afforded or not, but Louise like cuts him off and says, "This is what they wanted." Because isn't that what most old people want? They want to be able to die in their own home, have
Right.
some dignity,
Sure.
not be cared for by, minimum wage workers who are doing their best. But like those places have like one nurse on staff for the entire facility, and they
Yeah.
call it a nursing home. That is something I found out that's pretty interesting.
Hmm.
Anyway, this is the true horror of this movie. What do we do with our old and dying parents? Sorry, mom, in this capitalist hellscape. Nobody dies on anyone else's work schedule.
Right.
This is the true story of how people end up in homes. Like, not that Americans don't care for their parents or for the elderly in general, but we don't have social safety nets available.
No.
We don't have the luxury of not working and being able to devote ourselves like entirely to another person's care, which is extremely draining, more than a full-time job, and horrible, like under the best of circumstances. But anyway, Michael loses that argument. Louise is gonna stick it out. So then we see Louise poking around in the sewing room, and this is one of the saddest details in the movie for me. She finds a wedding dress
Yeah.
with her name like pinned on it, which
Was that a wedding dress?
was a
I mean,
wedding dress.
okay.
Yeah.
I
So
didn't know that that was the case, but
yeah. So this suggests like mom knew she was going to die. She sewed
oh,
this in advance because she wanted, sewing was her thing.
sure.
I could imagine like her being a person in a happier circumstance and like getting a lot of joy out of her sewing room.
That's how she showed love, probably.
She wanted Louise to have a wedding dress one day that
Yeah.
her mama made for her.
Aw.
I know. I know. There's a lot of humanity in this movie that's
Yeah, I agree.
unexpected. So we get some shots of like work going on as usual at the farm. Meanwhile, like we see visibly Louise is trying to cope with her grief pretty much alone because Michael is emotionally useless. Not really an indictment of his character. It's more an indictment of like how we socialize men.
Sure.
And remember how Mama said that Dad wanted the work to keep going.
Yep.
I think this is like a reflection of this American idea, not to get on another soapbox, but yes, I'm gonna that like we have to work through anything. The
Right.
average bereavement leave in the United States is 3 to 5 days, and that is only for an immediate family member, which is like a parent, a child, or
Yep.
a spouse. That is not enough time to grieve. It's not even enough time to get the logistics handled unless you work around the fucking clock like an emotionless robot. But fuck emotions, right? This is America. No one cares if you're grieving. We have
Move
fucking
on.
work to get done so that our shareholders can be richer than
Oh,
they
it's
were
fucked up.
yesterday. Yeah. It's no wonder that half of us are depressed. I'm surprised that it's not more of us, but I
Yeah.
assume it's underreported.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So Charlie, remember the ranch hand, shows Louise and Michael where Mama was burying the goats that were being killed off. Louise asks Michael when they're alone, like, who do you think Mom was talking to, referring to what the nurse had shared with them. And Michael shuts it down. He's like,
Doesn't matter. She knew what she was doing.
Why would you say that?
She chopped up her own fucking fingers in the kitchen. She made herself die.
Jesus Christ.
Well, it ain't gonna make sense. Ever.
and then he runs off like a little baby. And who comforts Louise? It's Charlie.
Yeah.
Charlie the ranch hand. That's kind of sweet.
It is.
But get it together, Michael. You're an adult. You created two children in this world.
Yeah.
How are you going to handle everything that's out of you? I don't even know. The next scene is another one of the scenes I would consider the hopefully future iconic scare scenes of this cult classic in the making, if
Oh,
ever
man.
it gets that following that it deserves. And this is the shower scene.
Ugh.
Shower scenes have such a long, complicated history
They sure do.
in horror movies of all kinds. Going back at least to Psycho, I think that's probably the first one.
And most recently in Terrifier 3, apparently that's the crazy scene in that movie.
I'm
I've
not
not
gonna
seen it
see
yet,
that.
but they
Yeah,
call it the
no.
shower scene. So there you go.
I know what that movie is all about, and it's just
Yep.
not for me. But it's good that I know that about myself.
There you go.
So Louise is in the shower and she hears some noise and she thinks it's just her brother. And she's like, I need 3 fucking minutes. And then she throws the shower curtain open, which is an interesting choice, even if you think it's your brother. But somehow
That's a
it's
good
the
point.
comatose dad.
Oh, God.
And he looks dead. He's kind of gray in the face and he's like glitching out. He's like shaking his head back and forth in a very supernatural way. He's also pissing himself. She screams and screams, and Michael comes running in. In the next scene, we learn that the dad was never actually out of bed.
Of course
So,
not.
what does this scene mean? I don't know, but I will, of course, give you my read on it, which only halfway makes sense. I'll tell you that from the beginning. I think this was the tormented spirit of this man who was being oppressed in his own body by whatever demonic entity, somehow like, reaching out to his daughter either as a plea for help or a plea for her to get away and save herself. But he's not able to like clearly deliver the message because of whatever's going on with, the entity.
Sure.
This only halfway makes sense, really, because first of all, why would he appear to her in the shower? A dad would not do that.
Right.
I mean, unless it's the only choice that he had. But also, why was he pissing himself? That is such a non-spirit human body sort of thing that it just makes no sense to me. But like, say the dad's appearance was just the demonic entity wanting to torture Louise. What
Mhm.
does the pee have to do with anything? It's not like it makes it scarier. So I can't make it make sense in any way. But this is one of just a couple of issues like that are small that I have with this movie.
You know what? It's funny that you mentioned the pee thing because in It Follows, I don't know if you remember, there's one follower, we'll call them, that
Mhm.
also pees herself. And it's a very weird scene. And it
Mm.
just adds an extra bit of like, I don't know. It's kind of like an
It-
ick thing because
yeah.
it's so human and like,
Yes, but that is the case where I think an actual human is being, I don't know, like those followers, they have actual human bodies, even though they shapeshift and stuff.
right. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a difference, but it's interesting that they both use that.
Yeah.
I just took it as it's like her trying to deal with her trauma and she's probably not sleeping well. And this is just,
So you thought she hallucinated it?
I definitely thought this was a hallucination at this
Okay.
point. Now, of course, my mind might
Mm.
change a little later, but yeah,
Yeah. So that's what she concludes, right? She
sure.
thinks she hallucinated. She feels stupid. She says she feels stupid. She don't want to talk about it anymore. Michael, I think it's interesting that it's Michael, the character that finds Mama's diary, because it ends up being Louise who gets obsessed with it.
Right.
But the last page says, I know he's there. He's killing David, which must be the husband's name. Devil, devil, devil. He wants David's soul. I've shortened it and maybe paraphrased a little. But she did say devil, devil, devil. I think that's funny.
Yeah.
The next day, the siblings are out in that cursed barn again. And Michael says, how did she get up there? He's looking up where the rope is still there, I guess. He said, the cop said it was a tub, but you moved it. Remember when Louise moved the tub?
Right.
So they figure out there's no way she could have got up there on her own. So did the devil like lift her up and hang her? Because normally, like the demon can just convince someone to commit suicide
Sure.
and they'll push the tub over and climb. So that was another thing, like not totally necessary, but also, I mean, it makes it seem like there's a mystery to solve, even though no one ever solves any mystery in this movie.
It never gets brought up again, I don't think, right? It's just like, yep,
It
that's
never
weird.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another one of those little things, but I'm cool with it. So
Yeah.
anyway, Luis starts reading aloud from the diary, which is a little weird. More about that devil, devil, devil. And Michael tells her to stop. Like, that's enough, Louise. And I kind of agree with him, even though I, as a viewer, want to know more about what's in the diary. Um,
Sure.
so cut to the morgue, where I get the idea that they have asked the Undertaker, like as a favor, if they could get a second look at their mom. So we kind of get the feeling like this is going to be a mystery and they're going to chase something down. I'm not sure what even they're looking for, but this does give us the opportunity for the Undertaker to give them a like sandwich baggie full of a little cross of these little crosses that supposedly they give out at Sunday school that the mom collected, but they mentioned the
Yeah.
mom never went to church, so the kids are super puzzled about how she would have ended up with these. But it
Hmm.
seems like maybe we got a clue. So yeah, we got a clue. We're on the path of something. We think that we see Louise back at home taking care of the dad. He starts coughing and she's like trying to make him more comfortable. So she's kind of close to him. The spider crawls out of his mouth
Oh,
and she's like, it's trying to find the spider. And then Michael comes in. Of course, there's no spider. So
right.
Louise thinks that she's losing it. What kind of a coincidence that her mom lost it. Now she's losing it, maybe. So Louise is out on the porch smoking again, reading the diary. And we hear the so-called wolf howling again. We start to hear it a lot, like almost nonstop at some points. And Michael is like going to sleep, but someone turns his light on, except he gets up and nobody's there. So he turns it off, goes back to sleep. And I was just hoping that someone would turn it on again. And yes, they did. Oh, you playful demon, you. How do you feel when demons just fuck with people about really stupid shit? It's kind
Oh,
of
it's
like the
amazing.
pulling the blanket off the bed, like just
Yeah, yeah.
why?
Oh,
Just
that's right.
do your demon agenda.
They got to get their kicks. It can't all be serious business.
I know, right? I guess if anyone's getting a laugh, it's the demon in this movie
Yeah. Oh,
because
for
there isn't
sure.
anything else that's humorous ever,
No,
which is often a problem for me. I like there to be some humor, but I did not
I
find
agree.
any.
No.
So Michael gets up again, hears that wolf again. He looks out the window and sees his mom. At first, she's like floating, I think, in the front
Yeah,
yard.
she's like
It's dark, it's hard.
levitating.
But then I think she's standing there, and for a moment he hears her voice like inside. And as he turns to turn on the light, we see her behind him. But then he
Oh,
turns the light on, she disappears. That was a pretty good, little scary scene.
yeah. I've seen similar scenes in other movies, but they did it really well here. It didn't seem, like contrived, I guess.
I feel like for the most part, they do things like that right. Like they
Yes.
do right by the fans. Like this guy knows what he's doing. He's made movies, horror
Hmm.
movies.
Sure.
And I feel like he's a fan too.
Yeah.
Like we're all in on this. So Louisa's torment goes like this. She gets up in the night, I think it's still the night, and she looks in the mirror in the bathroom and her face is like streaked with like vertical lines of lipstick. And
Yeah.
it's like red lipstick. So at first it kind of looks like her face is all bloody. But she gets really upset and washes her face, and then she finds the lipstick in the father's bed. So this is another thing that doesn't quite make sense, add up for me. Like, does the demon want us to believe that the father got up and did this to her in the night? Does the demon want Louise to believe that her father got up and did this? That seems more likely. But we don't know right now. Can the demon like take on a form and do physical things? I mean, I guess he lifted up the mom to hang herself,
Sure.
but
This seemed very confusing. And also the way she finds the lipstick, it's weird. She just like knows what she's looking for. She just like peels back the cover and there it is. It's just sitting there.
that's a good point,
Like
except
it's not
hopefully
even,
you would be doing a lot with the covers when you're taking care of someone who's like lying in bed and
yeah.
incontinent
It
and
just
shit,
seemed like she like immediately after seeing this in the mirror, she went back and just lifted the cover. It was like, I'm looking for something almost.
I thought
It
that
seemed
was just
weird to me.
the editing, like they just like they don't show a lot. They show us the necessary stuff, like
Yeah.
maybe we're supposed to understand she looked other places too.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. It seemed like a weird part of the film for me.
I thought this was one thing. I didn't think this a lot, but I thought this was one thing they could have got rid of.
Hmm.
I feel like maybe they're just like, well, Demon tortured Michael, so
Right.
now he has to torture Louise. Like,
Sure, sure. It's only fair.
you know, yeah, it's only fair. Siblings get jealous.
Yes.
I also think that possibly this is kind of an escalation as far as like interaction between the demon and one of the children, because before the lipstick, like nothing had physically touched them. They had seen
Right.
things and heard things, and things were creepy.
That's a good point.
But now, like, I feel like a boundary has been crossed. And I just want to note that this is about the 50% mark in the movie.
Okay.
Then the phone rings. Through the entire second half of the movie, this phone is going to
Yes.
be torturing us. And it makes me so glad that we don't have phones like that because, God, that's an annoying sound.
It sure
Anyway,
is.
Louise picks up and it's like another thing that doesn't make sense. It's the disconnected call message, which is like if someone dials out and it's not a legit number, I think this
Yes.
is
The
the
number you
message
have
that you would
dialed
get.
is not available or whatever, which, yeah, you don't pick
Yeah.
up a phone and hear that generally.
Yeah. So it's like, are the lines crossed? What's going on?
Hmm.
It immediately rings it again. It rings again. She picks it up and it's Mama's voice saying, "Told y'all not to come," which is just great. I think it's a really creepy moment.
Yes.
And she had to get in that line just one more time before, moving on to the great beyond or whatever. So next, Michael's in the truck in the rain and he encounters the character of the priest for the first time. The priest claims to have visited with their mother and presents Michael with one of those little crosses,
Sure.
just like the collection that she had on her when she died. And that's another one of these things. I'll have something to say about that. But they show the priest. They invite him in. It's like in the next shot, he's like at the kitchen table with them, and they're showing him the diary. The priest is reading from it, and the priest kind of insinuates that he was like the only one that was ever there for these parents. It's almost like he's trying to make these kids feel guilty.
Yeah.
And so, but the kids are wondering, like, if you've been seeing our mother, you must have known something was going on with her and that things were getting worse. And the priest is like, "Oh, no, I never saw any signs of this." They're like, "Well, our mother never believed in God. None of us do. But for some reason, our mother believed the devil was here. Like, what would give her that idea?"
Like, what have you been telling her?
Exactly. Yeah. The priest says, "It doesn't matter what y'all believe." He's like, "You think the wolf cares whether you think it's a wolf?" Interesting that he uses the wolf as an analogy.
Hmm.
Like, if I were the kids, I would know right then, like, wait a minute. We've been hearing wolves. Something is wrong.
Right.
But the kids, just get upset about non-supernatural stuff because they think it's the priest that gave the mom the idea that there is a demon. And they think that possibly this is what caused her to be delusional and take her own life. So they're mad at him and they tell him to get out. And the priest said she needed someone. She was alone. They both were. I didn't do that. I helped. And Michael's like, "Did you?" And as the priest is on his way out, Michael says,
You really think the devil's out there? That's your truth?
and I take this as just like an atheist kind of taunting a priest.
Yes.
Or possibly like, could this possibly be real? Maybe he's wondering. And the priest replies,
Your mama died. You heard her words, her warning. You think she's crazy because she saw a wolf? Saw him coming? He's not out there. He's already here.
very pivotal moment and
Yes.
bit of dialogue. And I like that actor. Anyway, so in the next scene, we have two things going on and we keep going back and forth between them. On one hand, we have Louise outside in the rain with a flashlight, and inside, almost like he's trying to do this covertly, Michael's on the phone with his wife. And he's talking about Louise, and he says, "I can't tell what she wants to do. The whole thing's so fucked." And he talks about how he wants to come home. And then he says, "Mom was all I had left." What the fuck, Michael? Okay, first of all, you have a sister.
Yeah.
Second of all, your father is still alive.
Sure.
So are we to understand that he was estranged from his father, or is he just an asshole? I kind of tend to think he's an asshole, but
I
maybe I'm
agree too. And I
yeah,
didn't get the impression that him and Louise have like a contentious relationship
not at
necessarily.
all.
Like they seem
No.
fine. Like they seem like they kind of come from different worlds a little bit, but it's not glaring. It's not like they're at, each other's throats on anything
Yeah.
for the most part. So yeah, it is a strange line. It didn't jump out at me, but that's true.
It sort of underscores how we really have no idea who these two people are when they're in the context of their normal lives. We
Right.
only know them in the context of them being thrown together for this thing that none of them, this horrible situation that they don't want to be in. So anyway, we go back to Louise now. She's in the barn with the goats and the mom's diary. And back to Michael. He's telling his wife to stay home. Like maybe she offered, I can go there. He's like, oh,
Right.
no. Don't
Bad
come.
idea.
Back to Louise. She's reading from the diary in a very weird way, like stopping every couple of words. It reminds me of like, in elementary school when some kids like can't read yet, but they're trying like in front of the teacher. They don't read like they're talking, but they're reading like they're really reading and it's hard.
Sure. Yeah.
Sounded like this to me.
Mhm.
So I think like something was really starting to go on with Louise. Some glass shatter stuff is jingling from the jingle lines. We never really see what that was, but we know that means the bad thing.
I like jingle lines. That's a good
I didn't know
description
what
of
to
that.
call them. I didn't even know how to describe it well enough for the search engine. But
No, I didn't either.
so back to the siblings on the porch again for one of these scenes. Michael talks about, he finally says, I saw something. I saw Mama out in the front yard and it wasn't a dream and it was scary. So that's a big step for him. So now I'm thinking, are the kids both believing that there's something supernatural going on? Like, is this the moment? Because they both have not believed anything really up until this moment. Michael wakes up that night to some really scary noises outside, some scraping. And it turns out Louise is already awake. The sound is coming like from just outside the door. And we hear the wolf howling again, as almost always we do now. And one of them like pulls aside the curtain and they see the priest's face in the window. And it's like 3 a.m. They open the door. Meanwhile, I'm like, don't open the door. And
To a creepy priest.
Right. So he's like,
come outside.
Keeps telling them come outside.
Yeah.
Wouldn't something was wrong,
I'll just stay right in there.
Yeah, Michael gets angry, like that's gonna do anything. They shine a flashlight in the priest's eyes, and it's like his eyes are all like rolled back, right? They're like white eyeballs. Not necessary, right? Like, because the demon doesn't have to look like that, but for some reason, that's always a signal in the movies that something demonic is happening. Somebody's eyes are rolled back. And then he says a great line. He says,
You want some rope?
Yeah.
This guy has the best lines in the movie.
I totally agree.
Mama has some good lines too.
Yeah.
This was a good character. It's such a small cast. They make such great use out of every single actor. Then the phone rings, and when the shot goes back to outside, the priest is gone, of course. Michael goes out a little bit to look, which is so dumb. I'm like, don't go outside.
Yeah.
The phone keeps ringing, and Michael's like, don't answer it. Then we go right to Charlie, the ranch hand, in his house. We see that it's him. He's desperately trying to call them, and he's muttering like, come on, Michael, come on. I guess he doesn't want Louise to answer. He's just saying Michael's name. And then there's a noise in Charlie's house. So Charlie is in trouble. Man. Oh, God, this is the scene. So Charlie is readying a shotgun. I guess somebody's in their house. I don't know why he wouldn't be calling 911, but he has some reason that he's calling them for. We don't ever know.
I'm guessing they're out in the boonies and it would just take too long for the cops to get there anyway, kind of thing.
That is a really, really salient point and very on topic for this movie. I think this is another scene that could be an iconic scary scene.
Yes, I totally agree.
Think of like the bathtub scene in The Shining. This is like this movie's version of that. Kind of.
This kind of reminded me of a scene in Hereditary towards the end. I don't know why. The Toni Collette scene in the attic. There's something about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very, very disturbing.
Yes.
So there's a young woman who appears to be Louise in Charlie's house, except she's not acting human at all. And she has a knife. She's cutting and stabbing herself. Ugh. And she's making inhuman demonic sounds. But the way that this is shot is so interesting. I hope I can describe it like in a way that does it justice. Like her mouth movements do not match the sounds that she's making, which just makes it scarier.
Right.
I rewound it and watched it like several
times. It's not coming from her, but through her somehow. Or
yes. But also, I don't know enough about cinematography and like these kinds of effects, but the way that they film it, it's also super creepy. and it makes her movements look like very inhuman, almost like sometimes she's moving like too fast
Like
for the
robotic
shot.
almost, but like dysfunctionally.
Yeah. Yeah, they did a really nice job in making this like super unsettling.
Yes.
And then she whispers in Charlie's ear, and then she sits on the bed and says, "You did this to me," and slashes her own throat. And then Charlie shoots himself with a shotgun. Happens
Oh,
really fast.
yeah.
So what does this scene mean? I don't know. Could it have been possibly Charlie that brought the evil down on the family somehow? Like, what does it mean when she says, "You did this to me"? Or is it just the demon torturing Charlie as well, just like he's torturing everybody else and making him feel bad about something or lose his mind? This is just one more question that's unanswered, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, because it does seem that everybody that kind of gets in the demon's way, he kind of makes them question things and like, yeah, like you said, feel bad. So he like knows people's weaknesses. So maybe we don't know enough about Charlie, but he seems like someone who helps a lot of people out. So like for him to have wronged
Yeah,
someone potentially, maybe that's like the worst thing he could possibly do in his life. So she's using that, the demon's
I
using
think
that
you're right.
against him. I don't know. I again, not knowing enough about Charlie, but he just seems like the helper type who's like your neighbor who's always going to help you fix a flat or whatever. So who knows?
Yeah, he seemed like super, super nice every
Yeah.
scene that he was in.
Hmm.
So the next morning, Charlie and Louise don't know this has happened yet, but they are outside the house, their house, and they see that there are no footprints or anything. And in this scene, we also see an American flag on a flagpole in the background. I don't know if we've seen that in other scenes, but that is no accident because there's also some American flag art like displayed inside the house on the wall as well.
Hmm.
I think that we know for sure, if perhaps we did not pick up on it before or on the first watch, that we are in the midst of some commentary on American life and what commentary it is
Interesting.
indeed.
Huh. I didn't catch the flag stuff, but
Louise calls the priest, named Father Thorn.
oh, this is a cool scene.
Yeah, because I guess apparently he had given Louise his card, although I don't remember
Right.
seeing that.
Hmm.
The problem is, though, that Father Thorn lives nowhere nearby, has never met the mother, and is now like super upset because his daughter, who killed herself, was named Louise. And he's like, starts to tell her all this, and she feels really bad.
Right.
Demon, what fuckery is this? Like, did this priest do
Seriously.
something to you? Did he exorcise you from someone else?
Oh,
Like, this demon has so much going on.
sure does.
We kind of realize then the priest was like a manifestation of the entity the whole time, whatever it
Yes.
is. Like, even when he was meeting with the mother. So that brings up another small detail I have a problem with in this movie, but it's not that big of a deal. That is, why would a demon give this woman like multiple little crosses? Because demons aren't supposed to like crosses. But I mean,
Sure.
their own universe, they have their own rule, whatever. So maybe it is some kind of religious joke. Like maybe he's like, you know, look how powerless your God is. I can give you
Yeah.
all of these symbols and they don't mean a thing. Or maybe he's not the one that gave it to her. Maybe she got them from somewhere else because she was looking for help. Maybe he thought he would just give that to the kids to fuck with them for some other reason. But
Right.
I think we're meant to believe that, like, the simplest explanation is that this manifestation of whatever who met with the mom was giving her these crosses. Otherwise, like, why would it even be a thing in the movie?
And it's interesting that there isn't another person who can corroborate this guy coming to the house. Obviously, the
Yep.
father can't. Now,
Nope.
the nurse, though, you would think maybe.
Maybe they never crossed paths.
Yeah, maybe not. I didn't think about that when I was
Yeah.
watching. That's a good point, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, these people, the parents, they seem to have lived a really isolated life, except
Right.
for having Charlie around. So when the dad is no longer able to like participate in life, the mom really had nobody to go
True.
to. Next, the doctor then comes to visit the dad. And by now I'm so deprived of any comic relief that I'm like making up my own like headcanon about this story. The doctor has basically nothing important to contribute to the plot
No.
except for the expositional detail that even if they wanted to take him to a hospital, the doctor says, I doubt he'd even make the highway. Y'all, in case of these listeners who are joining us from like Portugal and Costa Rica, in case y'all don't pick up on this, this is a clear indictment of like the dramatically increasing scarcity of medical care in the
Yes.
rural, which is a hard word to say, rural
Rural.
United States. But I have to confess that I really wanted the doctor to be like, kids, there's nothing at all wrong with your father. He is just lazy.
I like that. That'd be quite a twist.
I actually like made myself laugh out loud while I
The
was
father
watching the
pops up
movie.
out of bed and is like, hey.
He's like, April Fools, everybody. Where's Mama?
Oh,
Oh,
God.
damn.
And then it
Okay.
gets real sad again. Oh, I like that.
Then we have a scene with the nurse, and she gives a soliloquy about how the worst possible thing in the world is to die alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, is that really true? Because if you have enough morphine, I think I would be all right with it. I mean, it would suck to piss and shit yourself.
I mean, nobody knows, right? That's one of those
Yeah. But
unanswered
like,
questions.
I'm all morphined up. Am I
Sure.
really even going to feel like talking? And
Nah.
then like have a whole parade of people trying to make themselves feel good by getting in their last words with you when they couldn't be bothered in real life. Anyway, I'm getting off track.
Who hurt you? No, I'm just kidding. Anyway.
Everybody, so many people. No. The nurse also talks about there being horrible things in this world, and she says the word wicked. So it's almost like she says the title of the movie,
Yeah, we
but
got
not
part
quite.
of it.
Yeah. But she basically says, we need love to keep our loved ones safe from the evil stuff. I think this is really the point of the movie,
Mhm.
if you could call it that. If there's any like lesson or moral,
Sure.
this is it. But in the end, nothing works, does it? So, but I'm getting
No.
ahead. So she's saying, don't let anyone die alone. We are clearly obligated to endure any amount of horror in order to demonstrate our love, which we are required to provide our loved ones, lest they be taken by dark forces. Okay, so if this is the point of the movie, I mean, it's whatever. It's still a good movie.
Yeah.
But also she mentions them being atheists again. So punish the atheists. But still, I'm okay. It's good.
Yeah.
Then we get to the sad animal stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So Michael finds an injured goat and has to put it out of its misery, but that's just the beginning. Michael and Louise find like this whole field of goat carcasses. And Louise is like, or one of them says, I don't remember actually, wolves would not do this. And I'm like, oh, it's Louise. Because I'm like, no shit, Louise. There are no wolves in Texas. And if you actually lived here, you would know that. Everybody knows that, including the writer director of the movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, Louise repeats, she told us not to come. Nice timing on that line.
There's also, I think Michael screams, God damn it. And for some reason, it made me laugh. Like, he seemed genuinely like, I don't know if he was put out or something. I just took it as like, God damn it, now this. And it's just a whole
Yeah.
field full of carcasses. It just,
Yeah.
that was my little
I mean,
funny moment.
I like to make fun of Michael, but really, no one copes well with this kind of thing.
No, not at all.
It's just too much. I did point out that in my notes that they burned the goat carcasses at night, which I don't think they would do in real life because you do that shit in the daytime because fire is fucking dangerous when you live out in the sticks.
Yeah, I guess so.
It takes emergency services. Sometimes they don't even have a fire department. They have a volunteer fire department. That's a real
Right.
thing.
I just assumed they knew what they were doing because they're farm folk, but
Sure. Yeah. I think they just did it for drama. It's much more dramatic to have
so
fire
much
at night.
cooler.
Well, and then you don't have to really see the carcasses like burning up.
That's true.
So Michael talks about going to sit with, it's now the middle of the night, with a mama goat who's about to deliver. And Louise was like, please don't do that. And he's like, I'm not going to let them die. And if I'm here, I'm going to work. You stay here and look after Dad. And the subtext is, you're here too. And you're going to work too.
Right.
We're all going to work until we die, until everyone dies, because America. So baby goats are born. Louise continues obsessing over the diary. Michael gets spooked by some noise in the barn. Oh, it's important to note that he takes out a pocket knife to defend against whatever. Really small knife.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would imagine someone like him would have a larger knife on him.
At least in Texas law, you can't carry beyond a certain number of inches. I mean, unless you're just carrying it for farm work. Yeah.
They're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, but he came in from the city. So
oh, that's true. He's a city boy.
That's what he has on him. Yeah.
Fair enough.
At least the suburbs. It looks, yeah, we'll get to that. So there's some scary shit. And the mom is singing that hymn, the mom's voice. And then he sees the mom naked, coming in after him like a walking corpse. And
this was freaky.
comes all the way up to him and he's like, ah. Then he has an episode where he's on the ground and I think he nearly slashes his own throat.
Yes.
Something is controlling his body and he is deeply disturbed by this. So Louise is lying in bed next to the dad, and another great scene. Here's some weird noises. There's a shadow of this whole shot, panning shot of a monstrous hand shadow that like unfurls and spreads out over her. And I like that shadow shot.
Yeah.
And then there's something on her that we never quite see, but it's clear like she's under something, but we just see her like being pressed down and she's very tense and suffering. And whatever it is making those awful demonic noises, just calling them that because we don't really know, but it's the same sound as like the thing in Charlie's house made. And then like she wakes up and it's not there, but then she sees her dad on the ceiling, like pressed on the ceiling, like they do in some of these movies sometimes.
Yes.
It's always effective, I have to say. And I think they did that in Hereditary too.
They did,
so,
yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very, very famous shot.
And then the dad says, "Run away." That's his only line in the movie. But then she wakes up for real. This happened in her mind, in her dream. We don't know. Like the line
There's
between
so much
reality and hallucination and dreams.
Yeah.
We've totally lost that line now. We don't even know.
No idea.
But she does get up out of bed and finds that Michael has left. He's gone. He could not take it anymore. Before she could do anything about that, a girl comes to the door. Supposedly, she is Charlie's granddaughter with the news that Charlie shot himself. But like I said, it's hard to know anymore what is real in this movie.
Did we see her prior at all?
I don't think
or was
so.
this our... Okay.
Unless I missed it. But
yeah,
she seems normal when she comes to the door.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, I'm like, I'm accepting this. But then Louise is like, I gotta check out my dad. Like she hears something or something. She's like, you should come in. And then as the granddaughter like slowly steps through the door, she turns into like, I mean, she still looks like the granddaughter, but she gets demonic and scary. Says some scary shit.
Does she get a weird smile like in Smile? Maybe I'm misremembering
it. Smile, but she does smile.
She gets like
slightly.
A real like mischievous look on her face, kind of. Okay.
Yeah, it's like I'm clearly a different person now.
Yeah.
Kind of expression. Yeah. I don't think we ever know was she really there as a real person or never.
Yeah.
But she vanishes. So I'm thinking possibly not. She wasn't ever there. So then Louise calls Michael, who doesn't answer. The nurse arrives, and one of the future, hopefully iconic scenes is coming up soon. But before that, Michael finally answers Louise's call. And he's like, sorry, I just can't do this anymore. I love my wife and daughters. What he doesn't say is, I don't love you.
Chicken shit.
Yeah, exactly. But he does advise Louise to just abandon the dad. This is Mr. like, put him in the hospital, take him to a home or whatever.
Right.
Now he's like, just save yourself. But we know that she's not going to do that.
No.
She's the daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She is expected to do this. She's going to fulfill the expectation. Then we hear a scream from the other room. Turns out the nurse has gotten weird hair and stabbing herself with the knitting needles and attacks Louise. Attacks Louise to the point where Louise is unconscious on the floor. And then, here's the iconic part, I think. Stabs herself in the eyeballs horrifically while crying and screaming. Like she's crying like someone's attacking her, but it's her attacking herself. And she keeps talking to Jesus.
Oh.
And she hears, this is another really weird thing about this movie, because demons in this movie don't work like they do in other movies. She hears the demonic voice whispering, Jesus loves you. Like, again, why is the demon saying religious shit, specifically Christian shit? And then I thought back, the fucking atheist mom has been singing this Christian hymn the entire movie from the beyond.
Interesting.
Very interesting. So now I'm starting to think, like, is there religious commentary going on? But I just don't know enough to be able to determine that.
He's just a little fucker.
Right. Yeah. Maybe it's like pushing back on the idea that symbols of Christianity can be used to combat demons. Like, demons maybe are more powerful than we are giving them credit for. in these other movies, you know? Like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
so the next scene, I like to call this the horror version of Romeo and Juliet plus Gift of the Magi.
This was my favorite scene in the movie.
I
This is
knew
the
it would
most.
be.
I think I may have upped my star rating 1 whole star for this scene.
Have you
So
ever seen this scenario happen in another movie? Because like the idea is at least as old as Romeo and Juliet.
I mean, yeah, the Romeo and Juliet again. I can't picture
But
another movie
like
I've
in
seen
horror,
it
I
in.
feel like I have, but I
Okay,
could
I'd be
not pull up
interested
a
to see.
specific example out of my brain without the
Sure.
aid of Google. So I could be
Okay.
wrong. In this movie, though, I had the thought it's a half Romeo and Juliet,
Uh-huh.
because Michael gets home to his like really kind of nice looking suburban house,
hmm
goes inside, and then sees his wife and daughters. They're dead at the table, like they've been slashed and they're dripping blood down on the
Gruesome.
floor. And he's just devastated because like he's hammered the point home throughout the movie. This is all that he cares about now that his
Yeah.
mom is gone. So he decides to do this in the worst possible way, in my opinion. He lies down right there on the floor, slashes his own throat. But before he dies, he sees that his wife and daughters were never even really there. The
Oh my
table is
gosh.
empty, there's no blood. And this movie wastes no time. They come in, the mom and the daughters, they come right in. Husband's dead on the floor, and they are alive and perfectly fine, except they'll probably never get over the trauma of
Oh no.
finding Michael, their husband and father, dead and bled out on the kitchen floor.
About as
I
bad as it
mean,
gets.
yeah, that fucks you up for life, I think. The next scene, we've left Louise, remember, unconscious on the floor. She's brought back to consciousness by the sound of the ringing phone, and she is grievously injured, but she makes an attempt at that moment to escape the house. Even though, like, I don't think she's really walking, but she is like pulling herself out of the house. But then, what do you think happens? She hears her father coughing, and she decides she has to go back in and fulfill her daughterly obligation. So she goes back in. She's in the bedroom with her father. She hears Louise, help me, in Michael's voice.
hmm
But like it's not even trying to trick her because all of a sudden she hears it from like all around, like it's many different
Right.
locations. So it's not like she doesn't know it isn't real. It's just there to fuck with her.
Sure.
So her father is like going into respiratory stress, and so here's the moment like she's been waiting for. She declares that she loves him, she won't leave him. Finally, he dies, and Louise gets literally 2 fucking seconds of sobbing. Remember, we aren't allowed to grieve too long. This is America. So here we are. And before the demon finally takes her to, she hears her mom singing those same lines. What a friend we have in Jesus. What do you think about that ending, Bill?
I loved it. That was effective as hell. I mean, this movie just like from the halfway point on, just like ramps and just completely goes up and up and up and
It's
up and
how
up
it
till the
should
end.
be.
Yes.
Yes.
I thought it was
Yes.
a perfect ending. And it's again very nihilistic, which I absolutely love. No survivors. Big fan of that. What'd you
Yes.
think?
Oh, 100%. Everybody dies. That's how it should be. You know, I say that all the time. Like
Yep.
10 out of 10, no notes.
No sequels.
Now, now
It's
yeah.
over.
Burn it down. Now,
Burn it
I
down.
know that some viewers were disappointed that we never learned who the demonic entity was, why it was after this one family in particular. Some people consider it a plot hole. I'm actually fine with it.
It doesn't bother me.
No, it's scarier not to know because you don't know how to solve it. It's not that kind of movie, you know?
No.
And it makes it feel like it could happen to anyone because we don't know what they could have done differently.
Yeah. It's creepier if you don't know.
No one took out a Ouija board at a sleepover that we
Oh
know
God,
of.
no.
No one purchased a cursed object. And so, like,
Right.
we don't know the reasoning. It could happen to any of us.
Sure.
Now, they do allude to the only thing, they do allude to the fact in the movie that the family is not religious.
Mhm.
They don't believe in God. And the nurse makes another like reference to that. So maybe that's important. Is this meant to be why they are under demonic attack? I mean, like, I hope not, but even so, I don't even care. Maybe I should care because maybe I shouldn't support that kind of a plot. But
Sure.
as a person who doesn't believe in anything, this is all fantasy to me anyway. And for some
Right.
reason, this religious horror is like my absolute favorite, especially when it's fucking dark and nihilistic.
Yes.
Now, some viewers also have claimed that this is an ambiguous ending. Apparently, a lot of people have even Googled for explanations of the movie's ending. I don't get that. It's perfectly straightforward to me. Everyone dies.
Yeah.
Just because we don't see Louise's body on the floor. I mean, we have to know. We know.
Yeah, there's no cliffhangers. There's no
Mm-mm.
nothing really unresolved. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. No, it could go both ways. No,
yeah.
nothing, none of that. Burn it
No.
down.
Burn it down.
Would you like to rate this movie? Are you ready to talk about that? Do you need a
Yeah, let's
moment?
do it. I'll go ahead and rate it.
All right.
So this movie, the first half is pretty slow, I would say. I mean, there's not a lot of characters. Again, not a lot happening that's very in your face, aside from a couple of things. But like from the halfway point on, this thing just, like I said, it ramps up like crazy. The kills are fantastic. The jump scares are super effective. The score is really good. I don't even think we talked about that. Again, it's not like a
Oh,
over
yeah.
the top score, but it fits the mood of the film perfectly.
Excellent.
And it's a very moody film. It's one of those, where like the setting is kind of like a character in the movie. It's such a cliche thing to say, but it is, especially when you have such a small cast. The house, just the rural area.
The
It's like
farm.
the
Yeah.
farm. It plays such
The
a role in
barn.
this movie. I'm trying to think of any negatives I would really have. I mean, some of the scenes, they get a little repetitive where they're sitting on the porch again and they're talking, and then they're back on the porch again talking. Like there's some of that gets a little repetitive. I get why they have it, that's good information they're providing. But overall, I would say I was almost going to say this is kind of a middle of the road movie, but I think it's a little bit more than that. I give it 3.5 screams out of 5. It didn't blow me away, but I also found it very interesting at the same time.
I'm going to ask you to watch it again.
And that's the thing. I wanted to watch it again, knowing what I saw the first time. I think it's one of those, and that might change my rating, honestly.
I think you will feel different about the pacing in the first
Yeah,
half on the second watch
because I'll understand why it was
a
paced
lot
that
of
way.
things that are going on that are subtle.
Yes, I agree. I do need to give it a second watch. But what do you rate it?
Man, fuck this movie for being so good. I don't understand like every single thing about it, but I do want to say like the boxes that it checks for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I love a good demonic possession that is scary, that has a proper dark ending. This
Sure.
is that. This is the opposite of that exorcist believer bullshit. No one rallies together and learns a lesson. Like
Right.
everyone's fucking damned. Everyone is alone. Everyone dies. That was my first of all. Second of all, I think the movie is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no expert, but I like the cinematography, and I think it has, for the most part, very nice effects. I also think the acting is underrated. I think it's high quality, and there were some scenes where I thought like the performances were astounding. In my opinion, it's also like brilliantly edited. Sometimes we don't give editors enough credit, but really it's the editor that delivers the movie in the end.
Right.
And this is an example of where the movie is at 95 minutes, including the ending credits. It gives us just this story that we need.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I love that it doesn't waste our time.
Yes.
And the story itself is a punch to the gut. Like I've said how I think this film is like a critique of American life. I think it does that in a very like accessible, not highbrow kind of way. It's also a critique of like our American family culture,
Mm-hmm.
like our isolationist nuclear family, the failings of that, our work culture, and lack of any kind of like social support network for many people, lack of healthcare for many people, especially in rural areas. I also think I probably need to give this movie like some more credit for being like critical of Christianity as it is practiced in the United States. But as not a theology expert myself, I haven't quite figured all that out. But my point is, like, this movie delivers so much more than your average scary release to streaming movie generally can or should. And I understand why some people don't like it. Like, this is not a mystery horror with a puzzle to solve. There's no research scenes at the library. There's no clues that fit together. There's no, like, vengeful ghost that can be pacified. Like, I like that kind of shit for the foregoing reasons and more, even if Not every little thing makes perfect sense. I am giving this one a perfect score, 5 out of 5 screams for me.
Wow.
This is the kind of movie I want to see more of. Please make more of these. And I'll say it one more time. Fuck this movie for being as good as it is. And fuck, I wish I could have seen it in the theater. While the fans have definitely done right by this film, and you may have noticed it's been pretty highly rated on all the platforms, I did notice something. And it's something that increasingly pisses me off when we have horror movies that are like this. That when I say like this, I mean they're not super mainstreamy.
Sure.
I won't name anyone by name this time, but once again, critics at the major outlets missed the entire point of the movie. Like, they have said things like, yeah, it's scary, but there's no story. Fuck you. Did we even watch the same movie?
Right.
Things like strong start goes nowhere. What the fuck are you on? Some of y'all shouldn't even be reviewing horror movies at a professional level. And I hope that we get enough listeners one day that somebody who matters in that sphere will hear this and do something about it. Because everyone in the horror community knows it and doesn't care what you say. So why
Change
does
the
it matter?
system.
Why does it matter if we don't care what you say? It matters because you're keeping the mainstreamers from seeing our fucking movies and it hurts the bottom line. But anyway, oh yeah, also the soundtrack is baller.
So your first two perfect scores were both straight to streaming movies, right? Veronica.
Is that true? Veronica,
right?
was Veronica straight to streaming?
Yeah, I think that was straight to
you're right.
Netflix or Shudder.
At least in the United States.
Yeah. I just thought that was kind of interesting. So yeah, straight to streaming is doing all right for you.
It really is. I'm enjoying this era of movies in my life.
I forgot to look up the budget for this one. I can't imagine it was very high, but
it was low.
Well, yeah.
And it didn't make very much either, but those figures that I looked at, I think were only at, like, if it was a limited release, perhaps.
Super limited, yeah. One of us, it was COVID, so unless they re-released it later.
Do I just not know what I'm doing, or is it hard to quantify, like, how much a streaming movie actually makes?
Oh, that is one of those data points that is shrouded in mystery and people can't figure it out. And then you have ones where they're released on streaming and in theaters too, which throws things off completely.
I don't think they want anyone to figure it out because I don't think that they want to pay actors or writers or anyone who works on this shit in any creative way, like, as much as they're worth. And they're keeping people from finding out how much they're worth.
I mean, it's impossible to find streaming numbers for any of the major services, and they keep
but they know because they have data, and we know how data works. It's science.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah, they have all those numbers, but yeah, they keep
absolutely
it pretty guarded.
Yeah.
Anything else about this movie before we introduce next week's?
I think I'm good. I feel a weight has lifted off from speaking my truth about a few things, and also being able to talk about a movie that I love so much, and I've seen it 3 times now. I'll probably see it again, which is very unusual for me. Like, I'll probably see Veronica again. It's a very small list of movies.
Would that be a good double feature, Veronica and The Dark and the Wicked?
Fuck yeah.
I feel like that'd be a good double feature.
Absolutely.
So that concludes part 1 of Siblings in the Sticks. Join us next time when we ask the question, what about Gatlin? On our road trip back in time to 1984 as we revisit Children of the Corn. In the meantime, follow us on your preferred podcast platform, leave us a rating and review, and please share our show with your friends. Until next time, stay spooky.
Yeah.